All right, Dillon, what's up, brother? Thanks
What's
for
up?
uh, thanks for joining me on the second episode of Tough Talks from in leadership from SpecOps Solution Group. Right. Um. Before I before I get started, man, I got some questions and everything here for you that we'll get into later on. But I just wanted to I just want to tell you, like, you are the ideal. First of all, uh, no one knows who either one of us is, right? So in a minute, I'll let you introduce yourself and everything. I'm not going to go into anything with me because today it's going to be all about you and everything else, right? And your thoughts on leadership and everything. But but before, see, I just had a brain fart, dude. I'm gonna have to edit that part out, right? So, so anyway, um, uh, you're honestly, man, you're like, I probably want to edit shit out, honestly. Uh, you're honestly one of the ideal candidates for what I'm trying to do, right? Because you had a very successful career in the military, right? And then since you've retired, like you're going on to build your own little empire, right? You started a couple
Yep.
of small businesses and everything, and I'll let you get into all that. Like you can get whatever background you want to give on your military career and what you're doing now to to lend towards your accreditation of having opinions on leadership. But I always looked at you as a peer and someone I respected, and that's why I asked you to come on here because like I know that you've seen the good and the bad of leadership, and I know you've been directly affected by it and everything. And like I said, I think you're like the ideal candidate for the stuff that I like to talk about, right? So with that said, I will shut the fuck up and I'll let you give a little background on stuff before we start getting into anything. So floor's yours,
Okay.
brother.
All right. I joined in '03, and I did 20 years before I retired. I started out as an engineman on the USS Oak Hill in LSD,
Oh,
and that was perhaps the most miserable couple years of my life. That was a hard time there. And after I did that, I tried to go to Buds, got hurt pretty bad, and got kicked out. And then
yeah,
I was actually pretty successful there, and I was offered right after I got dropped from that. They're like, EOD's open, and you'd be a good candidate for that. And then I ended up going to EOD school and doing that. I went to Det Sasebo, was my first command. I was on an MCM team, and we dove a lot all over the
yeah,
world in some of the hardest areas. I mean, some of the cool things we got to do there was Operation Tomodachi when the tsunami hit, where they're clearing ports, body recovery, all that kind of stuff. Also, when the Chonin got sank, that South Korean ship was sank by North Korea's torpedo. We were
yeah,
out there helping with body recovery, and there's a bunch of depth charges on it. And we were dealing with all that kind of stuff. After that, I transferred to Guam. I was on a CRIF team, came off that deployment, rolled right back onto a CRIF team that didn't have a chief just for their deployment. Got off of that, I went to the training unit where I was started out in Chem Bio and went to IEDs. I was the LCP of IED division. And I rolled back over into Guam, and I think I almost did to 19 years there. Then I finished it at group as a
yeah,
master.
yeah. What'd you do when you were at group?
I was the operations master chief at group.
Oh, look at
Yeah,
you.
yeah, that,
Yeah,
that was something else in there.
yeah,
That was a lot of
yeah,
politics. All the master chiefs would come there to try to get their stuff done, and oh man,
yeah,
I do not envy the job of the CMC of group by any
yeah,
stretch of the means.
yeah, yeah. I imagine anytime you're the ops or the man mass chief, it's never a really fun spot, right? Everybody's
No,
coming out with their hand out about something, right?
yeah.
And you can't appease everybody. So yeah.
The nice part
Uh,
about group is being in ops is, the people who I directly worked with were the other ops master chiefs from all
yeah,
the other commands, and they all got it.
yeah,
They're out there just taking the same beating I'm taking, and it
yeah,
didn't take much. It's like, bro, it's got to get done. Let's just work together here and figure out a way to get through this because we're in this together, whether we want to be or not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's awesome. So, so do you want to go into a little bit of what about what you're doing now since you retired, or do you want to say that for a
yeah,
little later on, or what?
no, that's fine. Since I retired, I started a ranch. On my weekends when I was in the military, I would spend my time flipping. We'd buy a really crappy house and then we'd live in a construction zone for a couple years while we were there. We'd end up flipping it and then buy our bigger and bigger houses and bigger flips. And I ended up taking all that profit and moving it over. And I bought a ranch here in Nebraska, and we turned it to a regenerative ranch. And right now we're running about 100 head of cattle, 100 pairs. And then pairs is basically a mom calf. So we're
Yeah.
cow operation. And then we also do a lot of direct marketing of our beef. We're trying to get into lamb and some hog, but we'll see how that goes. I don't think there's really that big of a appetite for that. I think beef and perhaps poultry at a later point in time. And then
Yeah.
on top of that, when I first started out ranching, I wasn't busy enough. I was used to working those 16-hour days, were like
Yeah.
my working hours in the military, and here I wasn't doing that, and I was like, dude, I got more to give. I got more to I can do. So I ended up starting like a handyman service, and I was like remodeling bathrooms and stuff like that. And then I live out in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and I love it. But every time I go and I do something at someone's house, they'd say, "Do you know someone who does septic tanks or pump septic tanks?" Because they couldn't ever find anyone. After
Yeah.
about the ninth time I heard that, I was like, "Well, I guess I'm going to do septic tanks." And I started a septic business, and it's doing really well, way better than I thought I was going to do.
Yeah.
Ended up just buying a brand new truck for the business, all sorts of stuff. That's going really well. And then when I got time, I bought these. I'm buying these old buildings that have been kind of abandoned, and I'm slowly turning those into apartments in my spare time. I mean, I don't know how much spare time I got. I run a
Well,
big
I
ranch.
was about to say, what? How much spare time do you got?
I just, that's like the one thing for the military is I'm so conditioned to work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day minimum.
Yeah.
Like this is just normal at this point to me to work like this. So
Yeah. And then you also learn how to manage your time and your
yes.
resources, right?
Oh
So
yeah,
that's one of the biggest things I think walk away from all that, especially being in the spec ops community, is we learn to, plan your dive your plan, right? And all that kind of stuff. So like it's just easy to once you start planning things out and you can roadmap what you need to do, like once you figure out, you might not know what to do at first, but we're not afraid to ask for help, right? So like
100%.
you go like, hey, I don't know this. Find somebody that's educated on it, and then figure out what you need to do, and then start taking action, right? Instead of
You know,
a lot of people sit on it and think like, oh, I'll do it later on, one day, and like this podcast is a product of that, right? I'm like,
yeah,
here's where I want to go. Here's the things I need to do. I'm gonna suck at first, but hopefully later on one of these days I'll be good at this.
yeah,
And tag your it, bro. You're in it with me on the second episode, and
yeah.
you know, so we'll see what happens, right? So
And
I, I
that's something I've told everyone when they, some people ask me about my career and how you get, good, and advance quickly and all that stuff. It's like, it's simple. You're going to show up to a new command and a new position that you don't know a lot about, and you're going to suck at it. You find the
yes,
best person around you, you find them,
yes,
you make that person your mentor, whether they want to be or not. Like, I don't
yep,
care if you bring the dude chocolates or an apple every day or whatever you got to do to bribe him to be your mentor.
yes,
That's what you do. You go find the best
yes,
person, and you're like, I need your help. And I've done that here. I've met a couple ranchers here, and I mean, one of my good buddies now, he runs a ranch with over 500 head of cattle, and I was like, "You're gonna be my friend." Every time it goes
yeah,
sideways, I'm like, "Doug, what do I do?"
yeah. But
It's
that's the thing though is you know we do that, but it's because, and I think a lot of people get turned off by people that do that because they come across as potentially like sleazy, or they're trying to manipulate things, and you're just a good genuine dude that's open and honest about, hey, this I want to do this. Can you help me? And I'm going to help you in the process, right? We're going to both get better, and together we work with or through each other. Like that's the difference. Is it's not like a competition thing. It's like, hey, let's do this, man. You know, I think that's the difference in a lot of things in the civilian world, military world, right?
And another thing I would suggest to people who are having trouble finding mentors, another thing I did here was I went to some of these guys who are ranchers who have just been doing it their whole life. And I'd just be like, can I volunteer my labor? Like,
Yes.
can I just show up and help you out? And like, yeah, what are you looking to get paid? I'm like, nothing, just teach me something.
Yeah.
And that's what I say. I just like, and I go work for like a week or sometimes a day here or a day there. And I just volunteer and they'd be like, okay, well, you've never done this. So let me show you how to do this. And that's
Yeah.
how I mean, I don't know any other way to do it besides just hop in and be like, let's just get dirty and let me, sorry, I don't
Yeah.
want to cuss.
Yeah. Oh, you don't have to cuss. I will on periodically. You know me.
Yeah, because it's like a lot of times when you're like just doing a new thing, you're fumble fucking your way through it. There's no other way
Yeah.
to put it. You're just a walking disaster, and you're hoping to God someone just starts putting guide rails on you to correct
Yeah.
you. You know.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like I watch because I watch some of your videos where you're like doing some things. I was like, man, I wish I wouldn't watch that when you're putting your hand up in a cow to, dude. I'm just like, I wish I wouldn't have watched that. I've seen that before in life, but that was pretty vivid video, you know. And that's one of the things I think you guys are also doing good at is you guys are using social media to your advantage, right? So like your stuff doesn't center around you guys all the time, but it's like going around your businesses and doing everything, just like your septic stuff. Man, I love y'all's music selection that you guys are always doing. I'm always like, oh, that's a good song for pumping some shit, or whatever. Like I love that jam, and I love that stuff.
Like,
So
how do you make pumping shit sexy?
yes,
It's
yeah,
gonna be music. I promise you that.
yeah. No, I know. And that's why I think it's funny, because when I called you a while back ago to ask you, how you got into that, and then you gave me your background on, there wasn't a lot of people, and like that's the thing, man. Is like you have to find out what's around there, what's missing, right? Money exchanges hands when you either you could solve a problem or you do something that no one else wants to do, right?
Yeah,
And you kind of did both, right? So
yeah,
like you're being lucrative because like you found something that was missing, and then you're start doing it, right? So
yeah.
that's awesome, man. So I love it. One of the things I loved about I love that you're transitioning in the civilian world, doing all that stuff is like because right now you're a small man unit, right, with your companies, but later on there's the potential of it growing bigger, right? That you'd be back into a leadership position, and I know that you've seen the good and the bad of what leadership can or can't do, right? Like you've seen the
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, but and I know this is kind of a loaded question, right? It's like everyone always asks, like, what does leadership mean to you? All that kind of stuff, because it can be kind of broad. But like when someone says, what does it mean to you to lead or leadership means, like what's the first thing that pops in your head? You can dumb it down or you can give like a crazy ass answer. Either way, it's up to you. Choose choice.
Well, I mean, like the generic definition of that would be, the ability to get other people to do things,
Yes.
roughly, either through inspiration of action or through coercive means.
Yeah.
And the coercive side of it is typically looked down upon, but there comes times, especially when you're dealing with troublemakers, when that's your only option. You shall do this, but no one wants to lead like that because
Yeah.
it's tension. And man, I can't tell you, I hate talking down to people,
Yes.
because I don't like to be talked down to. And so,
Yeah.
like, I hate using coercion, but sometimes your back's pushed against the wall and you have to.
Yeah.
You shall do this because I'm about over this, and we're gonna have a come to Jesus moment here in about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
but then, I mean, the way that most people want to lead, either in some of them reach it, some of them don't. It's to inspire others, but you're never going to inspire anyone if you're not one knowledgeable. You know,
Yes.
you can't be out of your depth if you're going to be leading. You see that in the civilian world. my mom used to run, for this. She was a manager out here on this giant Army ammunition depot out in Hawthorne, Nevada. Maybe you were ever
Yeah.
out there by Fallon. And
Yeah.
but they would talk about leadership as this form of a manager can lead anyone, and they don't really have to know the job; they just have to manage. Well, that's not leading either. Leading is
Yeah.
the way I look at it, like if I'm out here on my ranch, I got guys come out and help me. I'm the guy taking the hardest job, typically the most dangerous job, and then you're backing me up.
Yeah.
But I think that's like the right thing to do. And when you apply that to the military context, it's the same thing. It's like, wait a minute here, you're the chief, the big badge, sitting in the truck, and you're going to send young buck down to do something that might kill him. No,
Yeah.
that's a you thing. Otherwise, why are you wearing the big badge? Why are you getting paid
Yeah.
what you're getting paid? That's your responsibility. And I think, in a sense, that's kind of what true leadership is it's leading from the front.
Yeah.
But I've also been thrown in leadership positions where I was out of my depth. When
Who did that to you?
that was in a training unit.
Oh, okay.
That was a rough team, man. I was there with these guys, all of them 4 or 5 combat tours, all of them coming off combat tours, NSW, MOB, whatever. And they all knew more about IEDs than me and had more experience than me. And
Yeah.
that was really, really a tough leadership challenge because you can't inspire those guys. There is no inspiring them. They already know.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, then how do you lead in those situations? And what is leadership in those situations when you're just trying to hold it together?
Yeah.
It's called character building is what that situation's called, because that's rough.
Yeah. That's the thing is I'm a firm believer in you don't have to know everything to be able to lead, right? But I do think there is a point where you do have to have the knowledge to be able to do certain things. Ideally, you want to be able to do things just like on a platoon, right? You should be, because you are going to be the one going down range. If there's an IED or something down range, you're going to go down. That's one of the things I like. Like, so if you look like back in the days when things weren't real, right? The junior guy would go down the bomb suit, right? That's how it was. A lot of times it was trained where like a lot of the junior guys would go down, and the head guy would stay upside and coordinate with all the security forces and all those other different things. But then when things start getting real, then people start realizing that it's you need the person with the experience to go down range and take care of everything, right? So I do think there's definitely times where if the cost is high, you need the right person in the right spot, and then there's other times where if you can lead and manage, it's not really you don't really have to have all this information depending on what you're doing, but you need to be able to learn how to ask questions, right? You need to be able to listen to what's going on and be able to ask the right questions at the right time to identify like the things that potentially could go wrong, and become showstoppers and all that kind of stuff, to where you get ahead of things, right? And then you identify problems and all that kind of stuff. So I agree with you. I think there's times where you need the knowledge because you're doing some dangerous shit, and you better be leading from the front. And then there's other times where you don't know what you're doing, but you're just asking the questions because you're trying to communicate and coordinate and all that kind of stuff with other people, right? Because you're not the actual one doing the job, right? So I guess that
100%.
so.
And there is
But
times, like when you'll be on a team and someone has a set of skills it's better than your set of skills at a specific thing.
yeah,
Someone might be better at doing X than you, and so maybe it's a good call to just step back and say, "This is what I need done.
yes,
That's the direction. Here's your rules. Go."
yeah,
You know,
and and then part of leadership is mentoring your other people too, right? So even if you're the best one, a lot of times you have to enable them to go get that experience if you don't feel like it's going to put them majorly at harm's way, so they could get that, right? So like sometimes you got to get the fuck out of the way to let them learn, because you're training. Like we in the military, we always say you're training your replacement, right? So sometimes you got to remove yourself to where they could be the future you, right? And then they've gone through that when they get in that position. So that I think that's one of the hard things too for sometimes for people to do is to get out of the way. Because I always tell everybody like I never really judged you on what you've accomplished. I always look at what your people underneath you accomplished, right? How did they grow and develop under you? Because that's your job as a leader is to set them up for success in the future, right? So, you know, but it does matter on how what kind of your team you got, right? So some
It does, and then once you start going from sled dog up to leading, let's just call it like a first class to a chief. There's a big mindset shift that needs to happen, and it's for a lot of guys it's a pretty jerky kind of start to it because you're going from being the I'm really good at doing the things, to now I'm over everything. And how do you manage that pullback to allow your guys underneath you when you're so used to being the guy who does all the things? And it's this balance because on the one hand, it's like, if I pull back too far, well, they're going to hate me for it because I'm not proactive enough. And then you're going to get many revolt happening there because this guy's doing it all. What's he even for? But then if you're too overbearing, well, they're going to hate you too because now you're a micromanager and you're not letting them do the thing. And so it's like it's this weird balance, and it's kind of hard to find. And I found with every single team, it's different, based upon personality. Like some guys want to be micromanaged, and they learn better that way. And some guys, like I'm this way, is like I don't like being micromanaged. I like you to point in a direction and say that's where we're going. Here's some rules. Go. And then I'll do way more for you that way than I would if you micromanage me. But everyone's different, and that's like the challenging part about leadership is it's this almost like a psychological battle to figure everyone out as fast as absolutely possible in order to get them to excel the most underneath you. And that's like the biggest challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. No, dude, I'm the same way. I want you to point and say, here's the target, and then give me my left and right limits, and then release me. Let me go do my thing. And I'm gonna do way more. But if you micromanage me, you're just gonna piss me off because I'm be like, hey, like you're holding me back. Like just tell me what you want done. There's times where it's like, hey, I want a sandwich, right? It's times where that's it. I want a sandwich. And there's other times where it's like, hey, I want a BLT sandwich, and this is what I need. This is how I want it layered. Like all these different times where there's a time and place where you're just like, hey, I just want it. At the end of the day, I want it to look and taste like this, and at the end of the day, it better be like this, right? So it's situation driven, right? So,
absolutely.
But so another thing I was going to ask you is like, what? I was actually having a interesting conversation today with somebody, and I'm interested to see what you say. Like, what characteristics do you look for in someone that's that's in a position of authority for you, right? Like, what do you look for in a leader, right?
I think I'm a pretty easygoing guy, and I'm a firm believer that you can't be a good leader if you can't follow. So I'm a pretty laid back with leaders, but there's two things in leaders that I absolutely hate, and then I'll get to the things that I like. I hate it when you don't give clear direction.
Yeah.
And then if I come to you for guidance and clarity, it's not given to the level that's needed in order for me to accomplish a thing.
Yeah.
A great example of that would be your predecessor out at 5, who you took over for. I remember I was running a program, the EWS program, the warfare qualification program there, and I've never ran it. I've never done it. I've never seen anyone run it. I had no idea how that program was supposed to be ran. And so I would go and I'd ask, and like, hey, like, is this how you want it? Like, what do you want? Is it supposed to look like this, or like, what are you looking for? And then he would just go into like this mumble jumble and then start talking about all these things that didn't really apply to it. And after 30 minutes of that, I just left and I had no idea what to do. Luckily, you were working in ops, and I would literally just go, fuck that, never talking to him again. And I'd walk into your door and I'm like, Danny, you know how this shit's supposed to go? And you'd be like, oh, yeah, this is how you set it up. This is what you do. I suggest doing these things. That. I was like, thank you. So yeah, I can run a program now because I know what it's supposed to look like. And so
Yeah.
I hate people who don't give clear guidance. Like, if it's
Yeah.
yours and I'm running it for you, tell me exactly what you want, and then I'll go and I will implement away.
Yeah.
The second thing I hate, thing that I really hate for people I work for, I call them like eggshell guys, because you're always
Yeah.
walking eggshells around them.
Yes.
One day you come in and they're cool and fun and happy and coking and joking, and the next day they're just in a tirade about everything. The next day they're depressed. The next day they're happy. It's just I can't deal with your emotions, dude. Like, I'm a very non-emotional person, and I just can't deal with your emotions. I'm sorry, I can't. Like,
Yeah.
I'll avoid you at all costs at that point.
Yeah.
But the things that I really look for in leaders is the exact, antithesis of that, the opposite, which would be clear guidance, keep control of your emotions, even when you don't want to,
Yeah.
and I don't know, just stay focused on the job and focus me. That's really all I'm really asking for, is keep the guardrails on me and keep pointing me in that direction. I don't want to deal with your personal shit if I'm
Yes.
working for you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I think that's one of the things is I was like, because you're like, hey, focus on me, right? And that's where, like, my buddy that I was talking to, he's gonna be a guest later on, but that's basically what he said. He's like, hey, I look for guys that complement my weaknesses, and they need patience to help me grow, right? I want them to be able to focus on me and help me, to grow as a person, as an individual, and all that kind of stuff, right? And
yeah,
and so that's where he's like, I look for people that have the totally opposite of what I suck at, to where hopefully they do these things, right? So,
mhm,
which yeah, I agree with. I'm the same way, man. When it comes to like what I want someone that's consistent, right? Like you're talking about the eggshell, like you
mhm,
have to be consistent. People have to know what they're going to get on a day in, day out basis, right? And then you have to be open and transparent. You have to be approachable. I think approachable is one of the biggest things, right? It's like, you know, if you're approachable, then people are going to come tell you things. And a lot of times you're going to be like, man, I wish I wasn't approachable, because that they just dropped a bombshell on you, right? And you're like, I wish they would have with this other guy, but that's what you want, right? Because the sooner someone comes and tells you a problem, the sooner you can start working towards a solution, right? And that's what a lot of people don't get, because if people are afraid to come talk to you because you overreact on everything, then they're not going to come tell you, because they're afraid you're going to shoot the messenger, right? So
mhm.
that's one of the things I always look for, someone that's consistent, and all that kind of stuff as well, and then open and transparent. Like I've worked for numerous guys that you knew you couldn't go tell them all these things and all this other kind of stuff. But I also walked up to other people that I could be like, hey, I'm not going to be the senior man with a secret. Let me dump all this stuff on you. And then they never overreacted. They would easily take the information and just deal with the problem to the best of their ability, right? And that's all you want, right? And then they don't hold it against you, right? Or stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was that was uh that was one of my things. So we kind of align on some of that stuff. And then another thing was, so like, in the spec ops community, we always have to do all these different things, right? We have all these different mission profiles. We do chem, nuke, diving, IED, surface, all this stuff, right? And then along with that, it exposes, a lot of it goes into our strengths and our weaknesses and everything else, right? So like, what do you think? I mean, if you want to, you can say like a couple of your strengths, a couple of your weaknesses, but the biggest thing is like, how did you maximize your strengths, and then what did you do to try to reduce the impact on the mission from your weaknesses, right?
I'd say I think one of my biggest strengths, it's also kind of coupled with one of my weaknesses, but
They typically do.
I'm a pretty quiet person. I don't like to talk a lot. But when someone comes and talks to me, I like really listen to them,
Yeah.
really listen to them, and I really try to understand their point of view. And the reason why I do that is I hate jumping to conclusions, like
Yeah.
and being wrong when I do it, you know. And so when I come to a conclusion, I like to like be at like that 80 to 90% right
Yeah.
profile. You're never going to be 100% right because when people bring you problems, you're lucky to get from this guy. If you get 50% of the truth, you're doing good. And if you get 50% from this guy, well, then you're probably arriving somewhere in that 75 to 85% right by
Yeah.
taking both schools and gently melding them together. So I think one of my biggest strengths is I let people tell their story. I let people talk. I let people truly explain. And I try to understand it the best I can if I was them. I
Yeah.
really for that. And then I also don't open my mouth until I'm pretty sure I'm in the realm of this is right.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that I learned, which became one of my strengths, was once you get to the point where you're leading from like on that top level up there, you come really quick to this conclusion that you're never going to be good with everybody. You're going to make this decision, and half the people will hate you, half the people love you, and on your next decision, that's going to flop. And so you come to this conclusion really quick that you can't make decisions based upon the happiness of the crowd. Your decisions have to be based upon like a moral compass and a moral truth that you have deep within yourself. But you can't make those decisions based upon that if you don't know and so you have to become very sure about what you believe to be right and what you believe to be wrong, which a lot of times others won't agree with. But once you find it, all decisions are based upon that. And that became one of my strengths. It was no longer about pleasing people, but it was about this is what is right.
Yes.
And then you just say, well, I'm going to die on this hill. This is what's right. If my superiors don't agree with me, I will concede, but I'm going to say, I disagree. This is what's right. And I think that those two things really became my strengths because I didn't know how to do any of the fancy leadership stuff. I didn't really go to schools and learn how to be flashy leader that makes people love you and that's yeah. All I knew is I would always do right and I would always listen.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, because I'm not the most extroverted person out there, I'm really quiet and stuff. A lot of times I'd have tendencies to not be intrusive enough.
Yeah.
I would a lot of times I would treat people like how I wanted to be treated, which was just tell me which way to go and let me do it, and I'm going to do it right. But what you find is that people need a lot more guidance. Like I found people need a lot more guidance than I need. I would just go figure it out, and I love the process of figuring it out, how to do it, how to accomplish a goal, and how to do good things. I can't treat people like I treat myself because I have my expectations for myself, and you have your expectations for yourself. But people, a lot of people aren't at your level of expectations, which are for yourself. Their level of expectations for themselves is down here. And so you have to try to grab them and bring them up. And that requires intrusive leadership to get better performance out of people. And that's I think one of my biggest weaknesses is I give people too much credit that they're probably going to be like me. Now, mind you, I've had people who are better than me work for me and they just blow me out of the water. But on a general level, that's what I found. I have to be really careful with giving too much rein, too much slack, not enough everyday interference into kind of what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of my biggest things, man. I learned a long time ago, you're not going to make everybody happy. And one of my biggest things I would always tell everybody is don't lose your voice, right? Because what people don't understand is if you make it based off emotions or this and that, then a lot of times you lose credibility, especially like as a master chief, you lose credibility with the CO or the XO or OPSO or whoever, right? because they're making decisions based on like informed information, and they're trying not to, they're trying to make sure they're legal and they're consistent across the board and all these things. And if you are making decisions based on emotions, then you're not going to advise them properly, right? And so like what you
Yeah.
do is you lose the ability to influence them later on, because now they're not going to listen to you because they know you have an agenda, or you're not giving them sound advice, right? And that's, a lot of people do that too when they're trying to get someone to yes, right? They're trying to get someone to say yes to something. They give them misinformation, they leave out key information, and all you do is you lose your ability to get shit done later on, right? So, and yeah, that's the thing, is like I do the same thing. Is like you always say treat people like you want to be treated, but it's not like, you got to treat people like people. And that means everyone's different. And you have to figure out how each person ticks, and what's their strengths, what's their weaknesses, and then how you're going to, you know, I lost my audio on my phone here. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I had it cooked up to my truck and it messed up, but you have to figure out what makes each person tick, man. And then how do you maximize their strengths, and how do you limit their stuff? And then, you just got to know you're going to piss some people off. And I mean, that's me, like me and you. I know I didn't make you happy every decision I made, but that was it. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's it. Like, I was comfortable with that because I knew sometimes you would agree with me, sometimes you wouldn't. And when you're talking about you being quiet, that's one of the things too that I think a lot of people don't realize. If you're someone that's always talking and you always got an opinion, people don't always listen to you, right? But if, for like you, I always, when you talked, I listened, because you didn't always talk, right? And then usually when you did, you were like making sense, and you had thought through all these different things. So that was one of the things that like I appreciated out of you, is whenever time you opened your mouth to talk to me about stuff, you could tell you weren't thinking out loud as you were talking. You had
Yeah.
already thought the process through, and the things, that the pros and cons of this and that, and all that kind of stuff, right? So like I appreciated that, because that's what I want, right? So I think, like, I talk, I'm, me, I'll go down some rabbit holes and have a conversation. I won't shut the fuck up. But
Yeah.
when it comes to like advising on fixing a problem or doing something, I think it through before I start opening my mouth, especially depending on who I'm talking to. If we're trying to solve a problem in a group, I'll talk out loud, right? But if it's
Yeah.
going to give a final like advice to someone about, here's a problem, here's a potential solution, blah blah blah, then I think before I open my mouth,
Yeah.
right? So, but
But on
yeah,
the flip side of that too is, and this is goes back to one of those knowing your people things, is though I am silent, I actually really appreciate when people are talking out loud during like a brainstorming thing. I might not be contributing,
yeah,
but I'm taking in all that information and I'm like, okay, well, this, that, and I'm trying to like sort it all through. And when people keep adding information to it, to me, it's really helpful because it really helps my focus the thought process and the end goal. And I hear people talking, or you hear people like trying to bring up like, hey, I want to do this, but then you kind of realize, well, that seems like selfishness and not the right
yes,
answer. That seems
yeah,
self-serving. I I think you're on the right track there, but there's all these problems. And I really like all that information when people are coming. And then I would typically towards the end of the meeting begin giving my opinion once I've heard everyone else's opinion. I'm like, okay, I kind of think I know this is what I think the right answer is. And I'm just,
yeah,
I'll say it.
yeah. And that's the thing when you talk about talking out loud. Uh, One of my things I always try to do is, if I was trying to get to certain like end states, trying to fix certain things, or whatever, one of the things I would try to do is just say, "Hey, here's a problem. What do you guys think?" And I would try not to add my 2 cents into it, because the moment, if you're in charge and I say, "Here's my thing, here's this," you'll have a lot of people in the group that potentially just jump on board with you because they don't, have an opinion, or they want to appease you, and they don't
Yeah.
want to, look bad in front of you because they disagree with you or whatever. But if you don't say what you're, all these different things from the beginning, and you let everybody go through the process, then people will be open and honest about where they stand on stuff, right? So and it's hard, especially for me. to not show any emotion when someone's saying something I agree with or disagree with or whatever. Because if you're, I'd be sitting there like, oh Jesus, because I'd want to say shit, but I wouldn't,
Yeah.
right? So, but it's one of those things where I would like consciously try not to do that at times for certain things, right? So,
Yeah.
but it's hard to navigate through that at times, right?
It
So,
is. Yeah.
but and then man, I got this one, and I think I know who you're gonna say, right? Yeah. If you had, I'm pretty sure you have one. You already talked about it earlier, your mentors, right? Like who's your mentor and what makes you listen to them? Like seek advice from them. You already said you had a bunch earlier, right? But
Yeah.
who's someone that you consider like one of your main mentors, and what is it about him that makes you like seek advice from him?
So I don't have like an overarching mentor of life, but I have
Yeah,
for each little thing that I'm doing, I have mentors for each one of those, because
yep,
it's like the cattle business. You can watch YouTube as much as you want, but I promise you, the first time you're looking at a cow and you're like, oh my God, it's going to die. What do I do? I don't give a shit how many YouTube videos you watch. You don't know what to do. And so you, that's when I have my friend over here, Doug. I actually bought most of my cattle from him when I started out. And I ask his advice on everything,
yeah,
from what are you looking for in a good bull? What are you looking for for genetics in a cow? Which ones are you using for beef? Which ones are you using to retain to grow your herd? Why? How are you doing that? What
yeah,
about vaccinations? Why? How are you doing that? He's like my absolute go-to for all that kind of stuff. I talk
yeah,
with him all the time, and I hang out with him all the time, and we talk a lot of cattle. And but I one of my big mentors when getting out and trying to structure businesses and all that kind of stuff is Jeff King. Um,
yep,
he he turned me on to a couple books that really changed my life about the way that I thought about money. Um,
yeah,
he gave me that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
yep.
That was
You there? Broke up on me.
yeah, whatever his name is. But that book, and this is how you grow, and it
You're breaking up on me.
changed my whole outlook on that. And then he taught me how to structure businesses properly, using them in order to, like, if you get sued, how do you minimize? And he showed structured your different LLCs and holding companies and corporations and all that kind of stuff, and really set me up good with a lot of different things. And he even gave me a bunch of business ideas and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
so that's who I go to for that kind of stuff, But I'm like every little thing I do, I have a different mentor. And there's some things that I don't have a mentor. And like the septic business, I don't have a mentor. And I don't know anyone else is doing it. Um, and the other guy, there's like one or two guys around here who are doing it, but I, I think they think they're in such competition with me that they don't want to talk to me really about it. It's just
yeah,
weird when I see them.
yeah,
I'm like, oh, okay, I
yeah,
guess we're in. but um, but yeah, so it's like it's everything I try to get a mentor in with someone who's very specialized in the thing, because
yeah,
that's how you know I don't choose mentors lightly. Like you have to know more than me, you have to be better than me, have to be more proven than me. I, that's where I seek my advice. Someone always better than me.
yeah, yeah. No, I love it, man. That's where, you know, I assume that's kind of where you're gonna go with it, right? And that's the thing is a lot of people I always hated in the military, they always try to assign you mentors, right? And I
Yeah,
hate that. I hate that because like when you do that, you just take away all the, you know, like the personal, like there needs to be a personal relationship there, right? Like and everything else. And you can't force certain things, but at some point in the military someone complained about not having a mentor, and then they force it on everybody to where you're trying to make this thing a program, and I just hate it. I'm the same way. I always try to borrow, beg, borrow, steal from everybody, right? And if you're my
yeah,
mentor on something, you're gonna know it because I'm gonna call you all the fucking time and ask you questions, and I'm gonna
yeah,
bug you, right? I'm gonna keep
Yeah,
continuously always call you and ask for your advice on things and everything, right?
yeah,
And it goes back to the whole, yeah, being good at it, but it's also just trust and respect, right? That's really what it
yeah.
comes down to. I gotta trust and respect you in said thing, and that's it, right? So,
Yep.
but all right, let me see what else I got here. You got any leadership challenges you face that you want to share with us? That like an example of one or two things that specifically that you encountered, and then like how you ever overcame it, or or maybe you didn't overcome it and you know you just walked away with lessons learned, and you're like, wow, that sucked, and then I should have done this X Y Z and moving forward, blah blah blah, or whatever.
Yep. I'll tell you one. I haven't really talked about it to anyone ever really. It was when I was at the training unit. You know, I made senior chief when I was there after about 3 months, and I made senior chief. And the next day, the director of training, the dot, who was basically like the dude who runs the show there, he came down and said, "Dillon, I need you up in IEDs to take over that division." He's like, they're running wild, and they were like they wouldn't show up to work on time. They would never put on uniforms. They wouldn't shave. It was just a lot of unprofessionalism. And so he moved me up there basically to straighten that division out. And again, I was leading guys who had a lot more experience than me, but I was just like, I put the hammer down, and that crew specifically needed a lot of hard guidance, right?
Yeah,
So for the first 18 months, I had that whole crew, and we were really doing well there for that 18 months. And then literally 90% of my guys switched out at the same time. So we
yeah,
went to a whole fresh new crew of guys who were the complete opposite personalities. And I was still kind of trying to run it that way. It wasn't going well. I had this chief in there who was really experienced, and so I was kind of letting him take the lead out in the field too much while I was like dealing with all the admin shit and trying to keep all the things running. And basically, what happened is what I was telling you about is he usurped power. They went to him because he was the guy leading every single day. He cut me out because he wanted all the glory and didn't, and a lot of it's my fault for not being more proactive in that. And then
yeah,
it almost turned into like this fucking rebellion, and it got kind of nasty there towards the end. I didn't recover from that at that command. My higher ups saw the leadership challenge, and they still thought I was doing a great job. Didn't feel like I was doing a great job. I felt like I was just getting kicked in the teeth every single day. It was really rough the last 6 months. And finally, I got out of there. And but the lessons in leadership I took from just getting smashed every day at that command, um, I think that shaped me more than anything else was. But I mean, it was not a gentle lesson. It was
yeah,
painful. Every day hurt. Every day was just trying not to strangle people. Just like, fuck. It was rough, man. It was
yeah,
one of the rougher times I had there. Was that last year and a half at that command. And I'm
yeah,
gonna be honest, I was so happy to go.
yeah,
But I took those
yeah,
lessons and I was like, this shit ain't happening again. And when I got to moving to five on that, I was like, nope, nope, nope. This is how the team's running. This is how we're doing shit. And like, but it was a
yeah,
lot more successful at five.
yeah. Yeah, so I had something similar, right? My first platoon, I had an LDO who had did, he was a senior chief and he'd done 3 platoon rides before he got commissioned. And I had a seasoned guy that's done MCM a couple of times as my LPO, and I'd coming off a shore duty. I haven't touched a Mark 16 rig in like ever, and I hadn't done, MCM forever. I kind of, I kind of did the same thing. I did where I was kind of detached, where I was letting this guy do this because I thought I was doing him a favor because he's only going to have a small operational time, right? Because he got commissioned and now he's got to be stuck behind a desk forever. And then I was letting my LPO run certain things because he had more experience, like recent experience on me. But what I did was I kind of it was my first platoon ride, and I kind of took myself out of the mix, and then
Yeah.
try to get that power back. Oh no, man! Once you give it up and you've gone too far, it's hard to recover from that, right? So like I took those lessons learned on my next platoons, right? It was like, all right, cool. I screwed up by giving up this power to this guy and too much to this, and and then that's where I was started learning like hey, officers, like you go do officer shit. I'll let
Yeah.
I'll bring you in and let you do let you do enlisted guy stuff here and there, but your primary focus is these things, and then my goal is to do the guys right, and then but I need to like empower my OPO, but I don't need to make him the where everyone goes to him instead of coming to me type of stuff, right? And
Yeah.
so it's a lesson, it's a hard lesson, it's a hard lesson learned, right? So
Yep.
and then yeah, because that's how I was. Because it's a similar thing with because I hadn't touched the Mark 16 forever, so I felt like everyone else had more experience than me because they were coming. They did. I got thrown on the team after they already been up and running for a while. So that was the thing. Is like I gave in to them kind of because they had the experience because I'd been going Iraq and stuff, and then I was on shore duty and everything, and so I didn't see it as a. I thought I was doing a good thing, but in the long run, initially I was doing the bad thing for myself, but it ended up being
Yeah.
the best thing for me because I learned so much from it. And then that's one of the things when like when we were in Guam together, or when I was in '8, I always tried to help the other, chiefs, the other LCPOs, and I had a lot of patience with them because I had messed up and had a lot of lessons learned. So I would always try to help them with all that stuff, right? I would take my lessons learned and try to make it to where I helped them, but everyone just didn't listen, right?
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
anyway,
That was like, I had a guy underneath me when we were in Guam, and he was on one platoon. It was a catastrophic failure. Uh, I did a lot of mentoring with him, really trying to help bring him along. And then he decided to stick around and do a second platoon. I was like, okay, dude, you got your teeth kicked in on that one. Here's where you're getting the second opportunity. It's like when you go in there, these are the boundaries you need to set. You need to do these things with your team. You need to. We've talked about all this. And you saw what ended up last time. Like, okay. I'm like, okay, it's a fresh start. None of these dudes know you. None of these dudes know your mistakes. All you got to do is go in there with the corrected version of you and do these things. It went right back to the same damn thing. I mean, on that platoon, geez. I'm sure you're familiar with this platoon, the
no,
platoon that,
I know who you're talking about.
and you had, they ended up with half that team was accused of doing drugs, dealing drugs. They had guys who were hotel fraud on the travel DTS stuff. It was just the most epic failure of a leadership position. So it's like, dang, you can lead them to water. I can't force you to drink, man. Even if I'm telling you exactly what to do, it's like everyone has their own hangups, and that individual specifically, he was afraid to be mean and set
Yes.
boundaries. He was too worried about being cool and being loved. And because he didn't do that, there was no discipline amongst them. So everyone was doing whatever they wanted to do. And that's the issue, especially with what we do. We're given so much rope to hang ourselves with, especially with the amount of money that we're getting for traveling, for training. And it's so easy to be like, without discipline, oh, I'm just gonna do this, or I'm just gonna do this. And it all comes back to that chief. That chief has to be on that shit, and he has to make sure everyone knows. And some people are afraid to be mean. I've seen some people who are too mean, who are too boundary oriented, who are too aggressive with that stuff. And it is definitely you got to find the mix.
Yeah, that's because that is the thing. When you start talking about it, I was pretty sure I knew who you're talking about. And his thing was he was always way too nice. And I would tell him that. I would pull him in my office and I'd be like, hey, bro, here's the deal. You're afraid to be like the authority. You're afraid to be an asshole. Like you think you're doing these guys a favor by doing these things for them, but you're actually hurting them long term. You're hurting yourself right now. And then like no one's gaining anything from it, right? Like you're you're too afraid to be mean, but your team is struggling because of it. Like if you just literally throw down the like, would you let your kids just do these things? Because if you wouldn't let your kids just do these things, like translate it to the platoon. Those are your kids. You're teaching them right and wrong, and
Yep.
sometimes you gotta give your kids spanking or get them in trouble, whatever. Like it's the
Yep.
same damn thing, right? And
100%.
yeah, that was his thing. He was way too nice. And what happened was, and they cut him out, right? They cut him out of the thing, and he had no control over those guys, right? So I because it was painful watching
I even
that
had to
and
go in there.
trying to deal with that.
Yeah, I even had to go in there one day and force them to let him back in. Meaning, I had to kick his LPO, his guy directly underneath him, out of the office and say, "This is not your spot. This is for officers and chiefs. You're over there with the enlisted dudes. You're leading them. Go." I had to
Yeah,
like kick
yeah,
him out, and then I had to yell at the officer because the officer was trying to do all sorts of stuff, and she didn't know. She had no clue because no one has ever guided that poor girl. And she
yeah,
was just eight and alive.
yeah,
And I had to rip every single one of them a new asshole and be like, these are your jobs. Start doing
yeah,
your job.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
didn't help. It still, crashed and
yeah,
burned real
yeah,
hard.
yeah. It didn't help. Some people don't. Some people won't get out of their own way, right? So. But that's the thing is you can't solve everything, right? As a leader, you can't fix everything. You can't solve everything. Sometimes you just got to be like, well, that's a wash, and here's some lessons learned from it, right?
Yeah.
That's it. Like you're just like, man, I'm glad that time's over, but here's what I learned from it. Here's what I'm trying to do to not have it again, and then and that's it, right? So yeah, good reminiscent. That was a good one. Because I believe me, I know, I know your pain on those guys because I I had to deal with them a lot myself, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. I walked out one time, and I'll give a little story on those guys. One time, I walked out one time, and someone was bear crawling by me. Do you remember this? Do you remember me telling you about
Oh
this
God.
before?
Oh yes, I
Yeah,
remember this. Oh,
somebody was somebody was bear crawling by me. And I looked at them, and so at Moya 5, we had quite a few guys that were trying to screen for like SEAL Team 6 and everything, right? And so they were crawling by me, and I was like, man, good on them. Like that, I hate bear crawls. And they're doing it this time of the day. And I thought they were doing a workout. And then I saw someone walking behind them with his hands in his pockets doing all this stuff. And I was just like looking at him, I was like, what's going on? And he told me, he's like, oh, I'm doing a little discipline. And I ordered on him. I was like, wait a minute, are you telling me that you're doing this to him as a thing of punishment? He's like, yeah, he didn't do this. And I was like, okay, cool. Stop right now. Go get your chief and your officer. And I want all three of you up in my office right now. Right. And then I literally went off on them. And then they were like, well, you messed up on this. And I'm like, well, okay, let's. So if that what we're going to do, do you want me beating you every time you mess up? Because you guys would be some strong, y'all would be some strong fuckers because y'all mess up on a daily basis. And I will have you, every time you come in the ops, I will beat the shit out of you every time you mess up. Do you want me to do that? And they look at me like I was an asshole. And I'm like, do you want me to do that? They're like, no, cool. That's not the way we do things. Like, yes, I get it in a training environment, you know, like if you're going through and you're doing CQB or something and you sweep someone with a gun, you're going to pull a tire. You're going to do these things, right? Because you're learning that hard lesson because you potentially just killed somebody, right? So you're doing all these different things because there's a price to pay for you messing up in a drill environment, right? But
yeah.
someone just messed up on some kind of administrative thing or something like that. That's out the window. That's where you got to counsel them by talking to them or put it on paper. There's other things that you're supposed to do, right? And so, yeah, I jumped in their ass and then I went and let everybody else know what happened and what I did to fix it. And that way they could know if they wanted to do it. I made someone write a note, like I made them write an essay on on leadership and all these different things for me and everything, and then come read it to myself, and then I made him read it to the whole team, everything like that, because like that was just unsaid. Yeah, that whole team was like was all jacked up, right? So hopefully I hope to God they all recovered from it, and I hope they had some lessons learned later on and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. We'll see. Maybe a
Needless to
couple of
say,
them watch this and later on, and they'll get it because they know we're talking about them, but they know we're right. They know we're right.
needless to say, none of them talk to me anymore. So,
Yeah, yeah. So, but all right, we've been on for a while, man. I know you got stuff to do, and Fat Boy's getting hungry. I got guys over here waiting on me to go because I'm out of town right now. I'm up in Corpus Christi, so we're about to go have some dinner with some guys here in a second. But
okay.
so I'll give you one last little question or whatever. I guess it's a two-parter. So, what advice would you give to someone? Because a lot First of all, I would say a lot of people that watch this, there's really no one that's going to watch this. Will maybe get 20 views on this thing, right? So you're lucky, right? You're lucky. But for anyone that watches this and they made it this far in this, what advice would you give someone that's looking to enter into the spec ops community? Because like throughout your career, you worked with, you went to go to Buds, right? You didn't make it like you talked about before, but you've been with Green Berets and then in the Navy OD or Special Operations community, which a lot of people don't realize, right? And so, what advice would you give to someone that's trying to enter into the program? Was it worth it at the end of the day, right? For everything that you went through.
Was it worth it? Absolutely. It's a wild ride, and it's a lot different than you think it's going to be. I remember sitting out there as a young guy trying to come in, and I thought, well, these just a bunch of cowboys. They're just like crazy party and shoot guns and kill people. It'll be great. The reality is when you get to it, it's a very professional environment. And I think the more you can understand that and step into maturity quicker, the more better off you're going to be. If you're going to do it and you're going to join, my biggest suggestion beyond the obvious, which is you need to be in shape, mental toughness, and all those kind of things, is put childish things aside. As fast as you can, as your brain and maturity level will allow you to do it, and begin stepping into being a man. What I mean by that is you are like the culmination of all your small choices every day. It's you, and you choose to be who you're going to be on a daily basis. And so when you aren't taking responsibility for all those choices that you're making, it looks down upon you, and you just have nothing but a road of hard knocks coming your way. The sooner you can step into taking complete responsibility for all of your actions, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah.
Another thing that I would say to you is, everyone has their reasons for joining, but like, what is your reason? If you're coming into a warrior community, like, what is your reason? And don't forget that reason. And what the reason why I bring that up is, you'll watch like one of these movies where a guy goes and he becomes, a warrior through all this hard training and, oh my God, things. Well, it's like, yes, there's a lot of hard training, a lot of hard times, but what you have to realize is you have to self-induce a lot of things upon yourself to become great. Here's a great example. When I was a young buck coming up, I just got out of EOD school, and I was so happy to be in there and so excited. But I didn't think they were giving us knowledge fast enough. I didn't think they were teaching us fast enough when I was on a platoon. And so I got a hold of the training books manuals for every division. And I went through and I read every single division, and I took detailed notes in my senior PQS. And I had it all, and then I'd step into that division, and I could answer every single question that they did, and I knew everything. Instead of going out partying when all the other guys are going out partying, I'd spend 3 or 4 hours in my room just studying, and then I'd go meet them for like 1 to 2 beers later, wake up, go to school, come back, and then I'd repeat that. And what that did is that took me from just a worthless basic tech who could barely tie his shoes to, by the time I was a senior tech, everyone already knew I was a senior tech, and no one questioned it when I would do it because I already knew everything. They'd ask me about a tool. I could explain you everything about that tool, how it works, why it functions, all the different ins and outs of that thing. And this was way before I was a senior tech because I put in the time, And I think one of the greatest compliments I got, I was a senior tech on a platoon, and we were getting ready to do this hit on a building, and they had oversight, and we saw an IED next to the breach point, and I made a call on that IED, and it was with one of the Army Special Forces dudes, and I was the first class, and so they went and talked to my chief afterwards. He's like, "Hey man, Dillon said we should do this because of X, Y, and Z." He's like, "Are you cool with that?" He's like, "Yeah." Dillon's been at the Master Chief level for years now. I wasn't a master. I'm not Master Chief, Master Tech level.
Yeah.
For years now. It's like, but that's because I self-induced a lot of pain and suffering on the front end.
Yeah.
That's what it takes. It's like you can't expect the military just to turn you into this thing. Like, look at anyone who's a great warrior. And I mean, you can listen to any podcast from Sean Ryan or any of those guys where they're having a Navy SEAL on there talking. They self-induced a lot of that upon themselves afterwards to become great. Otherwise, you're just here. You're at the minimum standard. That's all it is. When you get in the door and you put on your trident or you put on your crab, you become EOD tech or whatever, you're at the minimum standard. That's all that training does to you. You have to do it to yourself, which is way harder than having someone do it to you to get up above the standard. And that's what I say is learn how to self-induce the misery on the front end. It'll save you so much on the back end.
Yeah. So. Yeah. No, I love it, man, because that's the thing is so many people, they see a lot of us walk around in the shorts and flip-flops and all these things, right? But they don't see the hours that we put into. They don't see the studying that we do. They don't see all the things that you put yourself through physically and mentally to get to a certain level, right? And you have to, because yes, school gets you here, and a lot of the training that you'll go through will get you to here, and you have to improve. And that's the thing is the cost of not knowing and not being good is either you die or worst case someone else dies. Because worst case is someone else dies and now you got to live with it, right? Yeah. That's the thing to me is like worst case is someone dies and I have to live with that, right? So that is one of the biggest things. Like a lot of people they don't understand that like the work that goes involved in these things, right? So yeah. So I totally agree with you, man. So learn, suffer in silence, right? No one wants to hear you doing it. Just suffer in silence. Go do it, and then show it throughout your daily routine, right?
So, don't tell anyone you're doing it. Just show up way more awesome the next day. And wonder why.
Yep. That's it, dude. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this, man. I enjoyed it. There's times where I totally forgot that we were filming, and then other times when I'd fuck through a word, I'd be like, "Damn it!" So yeah, but I appreciate you, man. Like I said, beginning of this, like honestly, like you're the ideal person, right? Because you are like you already had these skill sets and these things with your character and everything, and then going through the Spec Ops community, like honestly, only helped you hone those things and enhanced your strengths, and then it made you. But the way we are, we understand our weaknesses, and there's things we work on correcting, and there's other things we're going to suck at that, right? But the fact that you've gone and then translated those into the civilian world, right, is awesome, man. I love watching you win, and I know you're going to only do better things, right? That's where I was talking to someone the other day, and they were like, "Yeah, Danny, I know you struggled when you got out, because I openly admit to that." I'm like, "Yeah, I never thought I had a plan when I was getting out, and I never thought I would be one of those guys that went through a downward spiral for a minute when I retired, but I did." Because when I got out, I realized my plan wasn't the plan I wanted, right? Like my plan, I had a plan, but then I realized it was the wrong one for me, right? Yes. But that's what we do. We identify a problem, and then we get a solution, and then we start doing things to fix that shit, right? Yeah. So I appreciate you being part of my fixing shit thing, right? Because that's what this is, right? It's me fixing.
I'm just glad to hear you struggled when you got out, because it was pretty fucking rough for the first 6 months or so when I got out.
Yeah.
It was. I wasn't doing too hot those first 6 months or so.
Yeah. But that's the thing, man. We go from jumping out of planes, diving, shooting guns, blowing shit up, and our job is to save lives or to do these things. And then you got all the brotherhood and the closeness with all the platoon and everybody. And then especially for like me and you, right? Like a lot of guys will stay in, Virginia or San Diego or whatever, and they work for like, the an EOD company or something like that, whatever, and they stay involved in the community. You moved up to Nebraska totally away from everybody, and I went back to Texas, right? And that's what I did. We both basically removed ourselves. I was told a long time ago, you either stay there with the community or you totally remove yourself. And when you totally remove yourself, you're going to go through a period because you're basically just ripping out all your support system and your structure. And you just got to you got to redefine who you are and do all these different things. And I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll figure that out. And then wrong, right? And I was like, try to dig myself out there, man. So yeah. So believe me, I hear you, because I was talking to a guy yesterday. He was like, or a couple of days ago, he's like, I got 3 years left. Here's my plan. And he's like, I can't believe you didn't get out with a plan, Danny. I was like, I had a plan, bro. Just when I got out, I figured out it wasn't the plan for me, right? I thought it sounded good at first, but then
It
when you
goes
get
back to my
into it,
analogy. It goes back to my analogy about the cow and YouTube. It doesn't matter how much YouTube you have and how much plans, how much study you got. When you're sitting there and it's about time to shove your hand up a cow's ass, you're in a different world.
yeah, yeah. That's a world I don't want to be in either. I'd watch you and I'd help you. I'd hand you some paper towels afterwards, because that did not look fun. I was like, what is this video? And I was like, oh man, I wish I wouldn't have watched that. So, but anyway, but yeah, man, like I said, I appreciate you. I look forward to seeing what's coming from you, man. And like I said, maybe one day later on we can circle back up on this and do this all over and see what comes from it and everything. Hopefully, hopefully, hopefully someone will watch this and get something out of it or whatever. All right,
Yeah.
that's the goal of this, is to start just having these kind of conversations to let people start thinking about what's their definition of leadership. What does it mean? Because there's a lot of managers out there, but there's not a lot of leaders. And and for guys like us, we have a lot of that leadership, ability and experience and everything. And it's just trying to take those moments to share things that might be something that helps someone through something, right?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, word, dude, I'm gonna go over here. Speaking of cows and stuff, I'm gonna go over here and get me a steak and some asparagus, and
Nice.
see what happens. So,
I
but
like it.
all right, brother, I appreciate you.
Yeah. Have a good one.